All right, we are live with the NHL gameplay, official gameplay overhead for 27 minutes straight. So we have the Seattle Krakens versus the Boston Bruins. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. How you doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Getting ready for my hockey season, which is starting in the next couple of days. So getting that stuff all ready, everything. We've been Seattle versus Vegas. We've been seeing both expansion teams. Yeah, but it may not be actually them. It might just be the thumbnail for it. But thanks for the good luck. I know we're gonna have games this season when it comes down to my hockey season, but we're a little bit iffy on like tournaments right now. A little iffy on tournaments because there's so many people and people are still having COVID-19 fears. So, but hopefully this gameplay is good. I already played the game, which probably most of you already played it. We played the technical preview, but may not be the same build as that we got with the technical preview. So still don't know if you're gonna get the game. I was thinking about it like not getting it, but it's like I have a whole YouTube series for Be a Pro, so like I'm gonna get it. So, but I could see like if I wasn't doing YouTube and I wasn't doing like this whole Be a Pro thing and stuff, like doing YouTube stuff, I wouldn't have got the past like couple years of NHL games. I wouldn't have got them. I would have moved on, played something else other than NHL. But since I'm doing YouTube and everything like that, then obviously I'm gonna get it. But if it wasn't for YouTube, yeah, for the past 2 years, past 3 years of like the NHL games, I wouldn't have got them personally. But I like the changes that they made to NHL 21 Be a Pro this year. So we have to wait and see what they do with Be a Pro this year with NHL 22 on I believe October something. They're gonna have like the reveal trailer and all that stuff. So I completely forget the roadmap for NHL 22 for all this stuff. I've been so busy with getting my hockey season ready and everything like that, my stuff ready, sanitizing all my hockey gear and all that stuff. So it's been absolutely crazy. Yeah, 5 minutes to the premiere. Yeah, be a pro was fun, but the end of the end of it, like it just they kind of gave us a half a copy of Be a Pro. I feel like Like they gave us like a real expensive tease. Because a lot of people bought NHL 21 because of Be a Pro. Because like the changes, like, oh, you get to play in Europe, you get to do all this stuff. And then when we actually got our hands on it and actually started playing it, it was only like 8 or 9 games or like 10 games you get to play in Europe, something like that, and like in a tournament. It wasn't like the full thing that people expected. Which I'm hoping this year you actually get to play in Europe. Yeah, yeah, exclamation points on Europe. At least they added something to Be a Pro that was different from last year. We gotta give them that. We gotta give them that. Give them something different. Give us something different. But a lot of people were disappointed. I was disappointed. I mean, that's why I didn't really upload that many. Well, I did upload a lot of NHL Be a Pro, but like after that, I was kind of disappointed in Be a Pro. I was like, really not that interesting to play anymore because it's pretty much the same as every single year. And after you get through all the questions and all like the answers with like the media and your coach, it's pretty much the same stuff over and over again. So hopefully like the multi-story, if that's true, they have like the multi-story line for multi-year, it'd be better. Yeah, I'll be happy with one storyline, but apparently this year they're gonna have a multi-year storyline with Be a Pro. I think I did a video on it. I did a video talking about it and stuff. So, but hopefully this year it's a lot better with Be a Pro. Yeah, it was disappointing to play like those games in Europe. It was disappointing. I was really looking forward to it. Like I had a whole like separate thing set up for it. Like I had a whole thing where I just do like an NHL Be a Pro, and I do like a Europe Be a Pro, where we just play in Europe for a year and see where our guy turns out in a draft, and then we'll have like a regular NHL Be a Pro. Like I had two separate series going on for Be a Pro, but it turned out just to have like 2 to 7 games. I played like the full thing in Europe. I didn't play the full thing in Europe, but it was disappointing. It was really disappointing. So hopefully this year is a lot better with Be a Pro. But we get to check out some official gameplay, even though we played the game like a month ago. Almost, is it a month ago or less than a month ago? I think they're just showing this for people that didn't get to experience the technical test. So yeah, yeah. There's like multi-group stages. It was it was halved. Like it was like, it's just, here you go. Here's a couple games in Europe. You'll be happy. They bought the game. We got our money. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. That's how I feel like EA works. Like, here, let's give them this brand new thing. They only could play like so many games in it. We already got their money. They can't return it because once they open the game, if you bought it physically, once you open the game, you can't really return it. But if you bought it digitally, you can return it within 2 hours of you playing it. So you get the playoffs only. Yep, here you go. Boop. We got your money. Let's move on. But I'm really, 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 really hoping this year that they represent the European teams and the European leagues properly, because they deserve a lot of recognition too. Like they deserve a lot of recognition. a lot of European players come over from Europe to play in the NHL. So, all right, I'm gonna turn down the game volume because I keep on getting copyrighted every time I do this. I keep on getting copyrighted or copyright claimed by the U.S. Tennis Association. So instead of going through that, you know what? I love going through the Tennis Association. Let's do it. Let's fight with the U.S. Tennis Association for the music here. Every time this live stream ends, copyright claimed by the U.S. Tennis Association, which is funny as hell. Funny as hell, but I love talking to them. I don't really talk to them, but I love I love sending my video to them, and it makes no sense. Apparently they own this graphic or own the music, apparently. Alright, let's get it. Actual gameplay, not all images. Oh. The one thing I like about European hockey, it's more exciting than the NHL.
Welcome to the second of 4 of
So,
community-led deep dives for NHL 22.
all right, I'll turn it up for you guys.
More gameplay. So today we're showcasing over 25 minutes of overhead gameplay for your
25 minutes,
pleasure.
not
We also
27.
worked with No Sleeves
25.
and Henrique to collect the top questions coming straight from you around gameplay and any concerns you had coming out of the closed technical test. Ben and Tyson from the gameplay team gave some great answers behind their thought process.
How's the volume for the gameplay?
I think you will find
Or for the video?
insightful. The full Q&A actually goes on for over an hour and a half, so we've selected the top questions for YouTube, but we will have a full-length version up on Spotify, and you'll be able to find that link in the description. I'm now joined by Ben, Tyson, Henrique, and No Sleeves. Let's jump right into this, and I actually want to go ahead and ask the first question. For those who played the game early through the technical test, passing seemed to be a hot topic. People either love it or they struggle with it. What changed with passing this year, and what was the thinking behind that decision?
That's definitely the big pressing question out of the tech test. I think that the general meta has been a bit polarizing. We often get from people that they want the game to feel like the game that they loved. At the same time, they challenge us to change it every single year. So for us, we always want to make the game more realistic, but we always go back to what our community has said from the previous year, from competitive community, those looking for more realism, that kind of stuff, and then equate that back to kind of the real world NHL. So we aren't making a lot of decisions very often around...
This guy's voice is very low. I can't help that.
We're always looking back at all those elements and trying to see where we might not be doing something that's expected based on how things work in the real world. And then when that taps into what's happening with the meta within our game, that's sort of the best case scenario, because it means that people want that change regardless of sort of where you sit in sort of realism versus competitive play and that kind of stuff. And then when we can tap into authenticity, we try to do that as well. So when it comes to passing, we wanted to make sure that the tougher passes to make weren't just as easy as the simpler ones. So when you're powering up your passes or you're passing blind sort of behind yourself against your momentum, you're not going to get as much pass assist as you did in the past. There's also a lot more depth when it comes to player attributes. Also, we had the introduction of X factors this year with some specific passing ones. The high level was just to make sure that people could still equate these things to what they see in the real world NHL or when they're on the ice themselves. So you obviously can't pass as hard on your backhand as you can your forehand. It's tougher to make passes against your momentum. These are all things that we've had in our shot model before. So when we looked specifically at the call out for forced cross crease passes, we did want to make sure that those were more earned. So it comes down to player twitch skill and also all the pieces that, again, you can equate to what it means to pass in the real world. So a strong pass with your momentum on your forehand is obviously going to be far better than one against your momentum on your backhand behind you. So that's sort of the core piece there. And as we get into this, Tyson will be able to dive into what we've done with specific X factors, how the attributes weigh in, how we wanted to separate players from our licensed roster, and then how that will also fit into modes like Ultimate Team and what that means for World of Chell when you're creating your own players as well.
All right, guys, before I get into my first question, I want to thank you guys for having me for this talk. I just want to touch on the passing.
What's up with the audio with these?
That people either loved it or
people
struggled
so
with it.
low.
Specifically on reception. receptions of the pass. So when players were receiving it, that seemed to be kind of universally maybe disliked. It just seemed like they weren't handling the puck cleanly. Do you agree with that? And is it something that you're going to focus on maybe adjusting before launch, or do you think it's working as intended?
Yeah, I think it's tough for us because like over the years, and I think back to when we were trying to get ESHL, World HL stuff back going from NHL 16, and I thought back to even some of the goals that I had when I was running some stuff for gameplay in NHL 13 and 14, is that we really want to encourage team play, but we also want a lot of depth and we want the realism to be there. So it is a bit of a struggle for us to have passing and receptions differentiate players and not have people feel that we're discouraging team play. We don't want players just bobbling pucks for the sake of bobbling them. I know that we have a lot of players in the community that really tune in the sim aspects of game, especially when they're playing offline franchise. And it's really cool to check out kind of what some of those tunings look like as players try to increase period lengths and get realistic stats and that kind of stuff. But especially in the online competitive space, and when you've got maybe like 6v6 full online, we're not really looking to kind of discourage great team play and great playmaking. At the same time, defenders need to know what the most dangerous scenarios are. If you can make a great cross-seam backhand pass tape to tape all the time, there isn't an advantage to kind of get a player to like close them off where they are losing sort of their forehand, or they're pushed into the corners or away from the sort of the momentum of the play. So we're trying to get as many of those elements in to add depth and to add more skill gap for players to have to work for what will bring them more success.
Yeah, let me bring that up. Since somebody says it looks so bad, it does look bad. I don't know what they're using, what type of capture card they're using. They're playing on the Xbox One. I don't know. But when I played the technical test, it did not look like this. To let you guys know, it did not look like this when I played the technical test. It looks awful. It does look awful. But it didn't look like this when I played the technical test. So I don't know what their capture is like, what their capture card using, or what they're using to record this. It does look awful. So yeah, it does look awful.
Back when I was more active, like on our forums, we talk about this kind of stuff. And again, it's kind of the high level goals between kind of realism versus Twitch skill when it comes to the competitive space. When it comes to the competitive side of our game, we often hear from a lot of players that they really want to make sure that everything that happens is because of a button that they pressed. And I would often get into these discussions with players about just rewarding positioning in general. Like, how much is it something that
they're answering questions from the community, the questions that the community had. They're basically answering them. That's all this video is. That's what I'm getting. Like they had over over an hour long of questions, and they cut it down to 27 minutes or 25 minutes. So
they would play an automatic pass reception or pickup, they would poke pucks. But in the online space, because we were asked to generate a bigger skill gap, and especially when players would perform these actions when they didn't expect them, maybe it would disrupt their skating and that kind of thing, we turned them off. And I think it hit the goal of increasing the skill gap. But often we would receive those videos of pucks just going straight through players saying, well, why isn't my player reacting? And if people that played, I think it was last year's beta, remember at one point, pass receptions were too powerful. Players were reaching behind their back and receiving these pucks cleanly and that kind of thing. So really we had kind of two mechanics. We had the pass disruptions and then we had the pickups. And we needed to tune the pickups. Like once players saw those and they saw that they were overdone, it was obvious because we all watch real world hockey all the time, and we
I think mostly, I don't know what capture program they're using, but if it looks like their bit rate, like their video bit rate, or like the video quality that they're recording at, they're not recording at 1080p. I know that they're not recording at 1080p because that's what I record my videos at, and my videos never look like this. It might be the bit rate that they're recording at, and like a good bit rate to record at is between 50,000 and 80,000. And they're definitely not doing that. That's what I record my videos at.
You wouldn't play an attempt at all. So you would see players play pickups if they
I don't understand either. They could buy a Elgato HD 60S Plus, like it's a really good capture card, They give you to buy like the new 4K one they have, and it'll look better. But it's the bit rate. It's the video bit rate that makes it look bad. I gotta tell you guys, it's the bit rate that looks bad. It's weird.
What am I supposed to do? And without getting into this whole sort of description that I had just given you now, we were kind of like, yeah, I agree. Players should make those plays. And we thought that we were at a point now where the community agrees with us, right?
They're just talking about like
passes were forced through, and that kind of
what the community talks about.
And we thought that we could this year turn back on what we're calling kind of like these reflex disrupts. So if you're
not hard to
able
fix.
To react fast enough,
you get a better
or
bit
have
rate.
enough time
It doesn't.
to play a nice clean.
It's weird because like
reception, your player can still
the
play
loading
reflex
screens, like the
reaction, so they
EA
can kind of
loading
flinch with
screen,
their skate or that kind of stuff.
Like the EA loading screen looks good. It looks crisp.
Exactly how we executed that, but it really was.
Like I could check. Oh.
And the goal from my side was to say that most players should.
I am.
When you're sort of inside your.
It doesn't give me an option to check the video quality, but it's like 1080p.
But maybe some of these better players would have more range, or they'd do a better job with saucer passes and that kind of stuff. So with that, I'll throw it to Tyson.
It's weird. This looks good. Like the replays look good, but the gameplay doesn't. It's weird. Man, EA, you're weird.
Within pickups and intercepts in itself, whether you can react to it at all. So if somebody's powering a pass right beside you, you may not be able to.
All right, let's just
all.
watch the rest of
Then
this.
the next levels, if you
I'll
can
give you guys
react
my
to
thoughts
it and
on
just throw in like a poke check or skate or something like that, which you may incidentally hit the puck or you may not, based off some of your defensive awareness, or mostly defensive awareness actually, since that's kind of like your reaction time stat on the defensive side of things. And then
EA
whether
doing
you can
EA
get
things,
to the puck position, but you bobble it if it's too hot to handle, if it's not a flat
My
pass,
gameplay never
and
looked
that
like
kind of
this.
ties into your hand-eye if it's in the air, whether you can kind of receive
Weird.
that, knock
Like
it
the
down
colors
clean.
are like
And
off
then
or
puck
something.
control is more on the side of if you can just receive it off the ice. And then
Weird.
the fourth is if you receive it clean.
Looks like an
that
older hockey game
factors
from the
in
90s.
your
Yeah.
defensive awareness, your hand-eye if it's in
Once
the
again,
air, your puck
EA, I don't know
control
what
if
you're
it's
doing.
on
but
the ice.
you're doing it
And
wrong.
then I think users should notice a lot more nuance there instead
doing
of
it wrong.
last year where it was very kind of you either picked off the pass or your player didn't react to it.
Man,
at
they
all,
must be
which
using Windows Movie
obviously
Maker to
feels
record this.
really bad if you're sitting in the lane and the player you're controlling just
they
doesn't do
recorded
anything.
this.
It just makes them look unaware and unathletic. So we wanted to add that kind of like gradient of if you can react to the puck or if you can grab it clean or not. And then we added a lot more animation coverage for intercepting passes with both your stick, your skate, if it's in the air, if it's on the ice. There's a ton of new animation for both normal players and then even players with the ability have even more animations and coverage that they can disrupt passes, more so in the air, and kind of more reaching ones, I guess, is where we put.
Yeah, last year it
most
looked
of
great, the
emphasis
gameplay.
for some of those X Factor
This year,
abilities. Overall,
it looks like hot
players
garbage.
across the board will have much more opportunity to intercept or at least get a
And
piece
whoever's
of
playing
passes
is
this year.
awful.
Thanks for the explanation, guys.
Whoever's
Actually,
playing
that-
this
that
game
makes a lot of sense now. Just
is
in
awful.
terms of what you guys were saying about turning off that system that was in the game beforehand. And I'm not gonna lie, the closed technical test, it felt like intercepts were completely different and a welcomed addition to 22. But I'm gonna throw the next question over to my man Henrique.
Yeah, happy to be here, of course, and just excited to see 22 soon. So this question is always a big one, though. Speed, of course, always a big factor in the game. It's always a major topic. So there is instances in which a much faster player cannot get space against a much slower one. What could cause that?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a good example of a question that kind of gets asked, and sometimes we even get kind of confused by it because there's sometimes questions get asked and we say, well, yeah, we did that on purpose. Then we kind of look at we need to look further into the details of sort of what people are experiencing and that kind of thing. But in terms of speed, we obviously really want skating to separate players. And over the last few years, we've looked back to kind of like how I was sort of mentioning off the top of looking at sort of the core meta of our game and how it plays, and then looking back to the real world for cues on where we might not be doing something that exists in the real world, because we want people to be able to take these cues that they know from the real world sport. We don't want them to just be things that we've designed for our game. It needs to be grounded in the reality of hockey. So last year, for example, we had made some of the changes around pivots because the way our skate model worked, players were able to kind of start accelerating and gain speed. For example, if they're skating backwards and then they need to pivot to skate forwards if they're going to get burned, they would start getting more acceleration before they really kind of got their hips around or got that first foot planted. Unlike the real world where that extra step or two is the difference between losing that step or not. So there's things that we've been doing just as we've moved along to improve our core mechanics to kind of achieve those differences and gaps. And then when we look at the general sense of speed, there's so much more that goes into it. Like we'll have players reach out and say, hey, like this player has a higher rating and they're pretty sure that they're fresh, they have a full stamina, like why are they getting burned? And it can really be the difference. Like we see these NHL players play and the difference in a breakaway or not, or a player splitting the defense or getting behind a defensive player to get a pass, like these are single steps sometimes. And there aren't many players in the NHL that can play on a daily basis that get caught because of speed. So for us in our game, it can be a really finite difference. And I think it really comes down to that. And it's not really to kind of make excuses around it, but it's something that we're interested in to kind of go, what do we need to kind of emphasize when it comes to gameplay meta, maybe that sort of is or isn't sort of realistic. Like we need to understand why players are experiencing these things in our games, because you can be really quick with your thumb or when you're viewing the game from a higher view and not on the ice, there's different ways that reaction time
we just have
plays
to wait
out
and
there. So
see.
even sometimes when we're realistic,
When I played the
may
technical
not
test, it
give the same
didn't
sense
look
of
like
what it's
this. It
for
looked a
players on the
lot
ice
better
to
than this.
lose that step or not. So I think that plays into it as well. And then the other thing is, we have different game styles in our game, especially like all the core players will know this really well, but all of our competitive modes online use the competitive game style. And we obviously have full sim above that. And one of the differences there is our acceleration setting. So on full sim, acceleration is a little bit more realistic. It's a little bit slower to get going, which adds a bigger gap between players. But we actually, I don't know, it might've been like 3 or 4 years ago now, we increased acceleration in our competitive game style. And that was really from feedback from the community around wanting faster play, more twitch response, feeling that, hey, because I am playing from a bird's eye view, I need that game to move faster so that it's like it is when it's on the ice. And I think the community originally had thought that that would provide more gaps. But really, if you think about situations where players are burned and they need to get back, acceleration is actually the one thing that's actually going to benefit them more than, say, top speed or something. So we've still been kind of batting around the idea of whether acceleration itself should come down a bit, and then that would help some of those scenarios. We still have a big difference between players, all the attributes matter, that
guy's
thing.
face.
Within these core game styles,
Like he's like super surprised that he actually got
or
like
sort of raise the floor, which
he got in the
increases
NHL.
or
What's up with the guy's
decreases the gaps
face?
when you're looking at a player who's like an 85 excel versus a 90 or an
What's up
88
with that?
speed versus
That was
a
weird.
92, that kind of thing. Again, kind of an
He was, like,
ongoing
super excited.
discussion on sort of what we're missing there.
was
But
like he
one
was
thing
surprised
players will
or,
notice
like,
this year is
he was
within
shocked.
agility, and we saw some of that called out during the technical test. It's interesting. It kind of comes through as positive and negative feedback. Again, kind of player differentiation being a positive, but then sort of the feel of your player. Oh, my player feels sluggish. I can't get them going. So it's hard for us to balance those things for people to kind of love the way something feels when they're moving a player around with their thumb, and also making sure that when players are giving feedback on the core meta of the game, are you keeping your breakaways? Are you getting the space that you expect? So I know that doesn't fully answer the question, but hopefully it's sort of some insight into kind of what we kind of bat around in our head in terms of Twitch game mechanics, realism, and that we are at the end of the day really listening to the community when it comes to those things. And I do feel that when players do take advantage of gaps and making sure that they do hustle ahead, don't start deking too early, that we do see players keep their breakaways. And we have seen players this year, especially with some of the X factors and the difference we made last year in pivots. We are seeing speed through the neutral zone, players that are able to pick up the pucks at speed, able to separate themselves. But it's something that we'll continue to monitor. And it's really great when the community kind of sends in clips to show us specific examples, because when these things are said rather than shown, sometimes we think we're aligned and we're not. And I think that's a really good thing for the community as well, that when they're sort of asking for something that we can't necessarily isolate, because it really is the sum of the parts, right? When it comes down to all the things I was speaking to, we really want to make sure that we take all those things into account, because one change in one area can drastically impact everything else. So again, if players want really quick twitch response, it might actually mean that skating actually doesn't have the depth or the player separation that you would otherwise want for the meta of the game to increase.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's a fine line, you know, with every change, especially with speed. But the changes sound very, very exciting and good for NHL 22. You moved to Frostbite this year, right? So Frostbite, of course, great on the graphics, like with a huge improvement over there. But what type of impact does Frostbite have on the gameplay overall for the game?
It's interesting, like within our core gameplay and the way it's done, like you said, Frostbite opens up a lot of doors for the art team, sort of within the way that the engine set up, and for those teams to share a lot of the great work that was done before to the engine. For us on the gameplay side, it will also being able to work closer with some of the other teams that have been there before us. I think that's always the best thing about being on shared engine. So for all of us in sports to be able to share things going forward, then you're not kind of building things from scratch, doing it your own way unless it's necessary. So in the past, teams may have done similar things over and over again. And we haven't sort of been stopped. Like when we put in the new skating engine, that was already shared technology from sort of a central group, and we were able to work on that. And that
somehow the
allowed us
gameplay
to achieve a high
they
bar.
look a lot better
the
now
first year
somehow.
that we put it in, and we continue to be able to build on it
Like instantly.
and then learn
That was
from
weird.
other groups. So I think it really just expands the amount of times that we can do that.
Looks a little bit better now.
And the more that you're kind of tap into what other teams
up
are
with that?
doing, then you can kind of take or leave the things that
Looks
work
a
for your
little bit
sport, 'cause
better.
obviously there's some things that are similar and
His
other things that are
gameplay
different.
clip.
But at the base level, like when you're looking at skating systems or locomotion engines, that kind of thing, although players are running around in football and soccer and we're skating,
It was
the
weird.
base
It was a
tech
weird
behind
spike of
sort of
quality
animation
there. That
blending
was
and that kind of stuff is something that
That's
is
weird.
useful
Now it's
for
gone back
everybody.
down.
So at a base level, it may not make sense of sort of what we can share with some
Weird.
of those other teams, but at a technology level, it adds a lot of benefits.
Somebody turned
and
up
then I
the
think
bit
the other
rate and turned
piece
it back down.
with anything, kind of when you're going to a new engine, as the art teams are looking to kind of push their bar, it means that we need to do the same on the gameplay side. So when it came to the stick and physics, it was the right year to do it. If we were going to really push the visual fidelity, and especially going for the years forward of looking at ways to continue to push the new consoles and see what we can do there, those sort of, like, people have probably heard of the term uncanny valley, right? Like as things get more realistic, then the things that don't kind of hold up to that really stand out. So for us to have sticks through the boards or sticks going through players' legs, I think we got to the point from a gameplay mechanic perspective where we started to tune those things pretty well. But when players are looking to the real world of like, well, why didn't my player pick up that puck then? And then you have to go into a replay and say, well, 6 frames before that, your stick went through a leg. So we blocked you out of being able to pick up that puck because we believed that X amount of time it would take for you to avoid that player and get it around. And now that we have the stick and physics, again, holding up to the increase in overall visual quality, we get to solve some of those things. And visually, the game will make more sense to players. They're like, oh, I get it. I couldn't receive that puck because my stick was caught up on that player and I need to get around them first, or I was able to take that player's stick out of the play and that's why they lost possession, that kind of thing. So there is a piece to Frostbite and just the general push from the team to increase that overall level of fidelity that's pushed the gameplay team. So not necessarily something that we had to wait for the Frostbite engine for, but it was something that's really challenging and we needed an engineer that was excited to take on that challenge, and this was the right year for it. So in some cases it's the engine opening up opportunity, in the other case it's sort of the right time to dive into that kind of stuff as well.
I kind of just want to piggyback on that. So in NHL 22, obviously the stick and physics has been added to the game. It's a new layer to the game compared to the past really big additions to gameplay, like the skill stick or even the defensive skill stick. How do you guys rate it compared to those in terms of how it's going to impact gameplay?
When we first started, we had no idea what we'd be able to do. Like this is something that's been on a wish list since before I ever joined the NHL team. Like I remember seeing it as just a fan of the game on internet topics, people chatting about it, like, oh, why do sticks go through the boards and that kind of thing. And then when I was in the seat as a gameplay producer and designer, trying to figure out, can you solve these problems? We always kind of had conversations with the community around whether it was the right time to take that on. And I totally see it through the lens of players that were challenging at that on us, going like, well, it's just not realistic. Why would you ever do it that way? But when we've tried to do things like that in the past, players have actually lost control that arguably they should still have in the real world. So being able to kind of navigate near the boards, as much as it allowed you to do some things that were unrealistic, it allowed you to kind of cycle the puck and stay down low. And if you were forced to be a full stick length away from the boards, like other games that have tried to do those things in the past, or just sort of what that would have led to us having to do without more advanced animation systems and the stick sort of running in physics, it would have probably hampered things too much where people would have lost the fun factor. And I know that players on our forums and stuff were like, oh, well, just let us try it, right? Like, didn't want to kind of take our word for it. But I think that when we had done some of those things, it was really cool from a tech test perspective. If we had put out demos, I think that people that are really into the simulation side of things would have gone like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I don't care if I lose the puck, and it's just great to have that in the game. But we weren't ready for something like that to kind of take the main stage and get there. And I felt that this year, again, it was the year to challenge it again. We didn't know if we'd get a solution. And we had a conversation the other day with the engineer that was responsible. And I just sort of said, tip of my cap to you, because it really got a lot further than I thought. And early on, we were kind of like, well, what if it was only on for the puck carrier in these specific scenarios, or only to make the protect puck mechanic better, so that as you're driving in, that it doesn't seem odd to have sticks going through things, and that you can really push the defensive skill stick away with your free arm when you're protecting the puck. Like, what if we just got that scenario right? How would that be? And the more we played it, the more those unique scenarios were like, oh, this is really cool. We have to keep going. And we felt kind of guilty at times pushing the engineer responsible, because we're kind of going like, oh, here we are just asking for more and more stretch goals. But as we expanded it, I think it did move from being really cool for certain scenarios to really changing the overall meta of the game. And then the other piece is just, again, for people to kind of visually understand why things happen.
Oh, there was
so
a
for
pass
people that
across.
have to know the game mechanics in the past, and like I mentioned before, say like, oh, because my stick went through this object at this time, I'm not gonna be able to do this thing, is confusing if you aren't looking at things in that detail. So now that you can actually equate it to, oh, it's because my stick's held up, it just makes more physical sense and just what people already know of the real sport of hockey. You don't need to kind of put it through the filter of what's the game mechanic version of this thing. Will it hold up to things like the skill stick? I don't know. I think when you get a mechanic that you have one-to-one control with your thumb, it's really hard for us to come up with an innovation that meets that level. But I think in terms of the sum of the parts of the system, like we like to talk to often, in terms of visual realism, it's really expanded the depth of player differentiation. It's opened up the doors for a lot of the X factors that we added in. So again, getting rid of a lot of the black and white mechanics. Like, players have been frustrated by incidental contact. I've been called out for that stuff all the time, like, just turn it off. And it's funny because we also get people call out that all we care about is offense. And yet some of the main things that we get challenged on at the competitive space are the defensive things, like how easy it is to get shoved off the puck, or how easy it is to lose the puck to stick on stick contact. So now that those things aren't just kind of on or off, and that it matters how much strength you have on your stick, and that a player going into a pickup with two hands versus one hand, that kind of stuff we would have never been able to do without stick and physics. So it was really cool to see the doors open there and for things to physically make sense. So I think when you are someone who really pays attention to the sub levels of detail within the game, somebody who loves the authenticity, and for us to be able to do all that and overall preserve a lot of the core game balance that we had before, like, we worried, like, what if this gets to simulation within a 4-minute period game? Like, is the puck going to be loose all the time? It's really, really held up well. So I do ask the community in its edge cases. It's obviously the first year doing this. It's a big technical achievement. So hopefully they'll be kind to us and share with us the things that
they
we can
won't. They
improve,
won't be
as
kind
opposed
to you.
using examples.
I'm sorry
of
to
things
say,
that don't
but
go
the
right as
NHL
a reason to go,
community
oh, this should get
will
turned
not
off
be
or it should
kind to you.
changed. I really hope that it is
that's new
embraced,
stuff.
and from the early feedback from the technical test, I think that it is going well. But I really hope that this is only the start of being able to do more with that feature, and for us to get the stick and physics in more and more cases, like away from the puck and that kind of stuff as well.
Thanks everyone for listening. Please let us know what you think, and if you still have any questions around gameplay,
Did they just ask?
future content.
They asked like the EA community or like the NHL community to be nice, or be nice with them about the new stuff. Be nice with them. Yeah, right. They will not be nice. If there's something wrong, they will let you know. They will let you know. Oh man, that was interesting. They asked like 6-7 questions, and they expand them to like a whole story. Man. All right. First off, the gameplay looked awful because due to either their capture card, how they captured it, or how they rendered it, or the video bitrate, it looked awful. When I played the technical test, it did not look like that at all. Another thing is they just talked about the questions that the community asked. And I don't think there were really good questions or like really good questions. I think there were better questions out there that they could have chose to explain the game a little bit more and stuff. And like, obviously they asked or they did about the Frostbite engine and like how it like will make the game better in the future, but not like this year's game. This year's game will be good, but next year's game will be a little bit better because they can understand the Frostbite engine a little bit more. And in this, like with the Frostbite engine, they can share assets from Madden and FIFA. They could share stuff because it's the same engine. They're not on separate engines anymore. It's weird. It's weird. It's a weird little thing that they put on. That they had. It was weird. What do you guys think about the what do you guys think about that overhead gameplay for 27 minutes straight? Basically, it was just a Q&A. Alright, so my OBS crashed for some weird reason. That was weird. Yeah, but it crashed. What did you guys think about the Q&A? Should I do a little bit more of a detailed video on it? I think I'm going to do a little bit more of a detailed video on it. Yeah, I'm gonna download that video, talk about it a little bit more. There's really nothing really to talk about at the same time. There's really nothing else to talk about. But yeah, now my OBS is acting up. OBS is acting up. It's alright. But anyways, I'm glad you guys can join me on this reaction of a Q&A of overhead gameplay. The gameplay and loading screens did not match up. It might be just because, might be just me. The loading screens look cool. Looks cool. Gameplay, not so much. They might have. Here's probably what they might have did. They probably recorded the gameplay like early in the build, but they wanted to throw in like the new loading screens. So like the way they edited it, it made it look like the loading screens were part of the game. Because like the loading screens look good. Like the loading screens looked crisp, sharp, the way they're supposed to be. Even like after they scored a goal and they showed the replays looked amazing. The gameplay looked awful. So I don't know who recorded that gameplay, but they had the wrong video settings, in my opinion. They had the wrong video settings. Because like when I'm recording video, I use OBS. I use bitrate between, I think it's 70,000 and 80,000 bitrate, which is very, very high. You don't need it that high for 1080p. I just put it that high because YouTube brings it down so I can get my quality back on YouTube. Because YouTube lowers the bitrate, lowers the video quality just a little bit, compresses it. So I record at a higher bitrate to get that bitrate back on YouTube. But like, it's just, the way they rendered it, I don't know what editing program they used, but they also probably put a lower bitrate. It looked like they recorded at 720p and upscaled it to 1080p. But yeah, it's just it wasn't a good look for the gameplay. It wasn't a good look. Kind of wish they had better looking gameplay. I feel like a lot of people would have been a lot more positive about the game this year if they had better looking gameplay and stuff. So, but yeah, it was weird. It was weird. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this live stream and this reaction. I'll have a video coming out, probably giving you guys my thoughts on it a little bit more, and all that stuff. I have to really watch the video again and listen to all the questions and answers that they put in to really give you guys my opinions, like really 100% my opinion. I'll make a video on it. I'll upload it in a couple of days. But if you guys enjoyed this live stream, smash the like button. Subscribe if you guys haven't already, because I'll have NHL 22 Be a Pro gameplay up on the 7th or the 8th of October. So coming up in the next like week or so, I'll have some NHL 22 Be a Pro on this channel. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But my name is Justin or Prez, and I'll see you guys on the next live stream. All right, see you guys later.